Hi everyone, I'm Emily,
Hi, I'm Lev.
and
This
today we will be talking about phonics and phonemic awareness. So, when we went into this project, we kind of had the mindset of kindergarten or first grade because that's what we both teach or would like to teach. So we'll start with the phonics definition, which we came up with as the construction of words through the correspondence between letters and their spoken sound. So, basically, the letter sound correspondence. And then for phonemic awareness definition, the ability to isolate sounds within a spoken word.
okay, so why does phonics and phonemic awareness matter? We said that they're foundational skills within literacy, so it's really critical to understand both of these skills so that students can become accurate readers, they can decode words, increase their fluency, and build strong comprehension.
So, what this may look like, it should first start with explicit instruction because students come into school sometimes not having any background information on phonics or phonemic awareness. So, having these skills clearly be modeled by a teacher, such as modeling the name of a letter and the sound that corresponds with it, doing that guided practice, and then releasing the students to do an independent practice. This is also useful with a multisensory approach because it deals with speech. You can have many different visuals, you can trace with fingers, and it applies to reading and writing and speaking and listening as well.
Okay, so a couple common misconceptions. The first one, people tend to think that phonemic awareness and phonics are the same thing or like a very similar thing that share kind of the same definition, which is not true. Although they are related, they are two entirely different skills. So if anything, I think that's the most important thing to take away from this is that they are their own individual skills. Another common misconception is that memorization can take place of phonics instruction, which we've learned that memorization doesn't actually teach students the process of reading and writing. It's more of just like seeing and remembering something for what it is, but it's not actually teaching students to identify unfamiliar words, and it doesn't really give them a skill set to build off of. It's just straight memorization.
And then this is an example of an instructional routine. We would first start with more of a phonics activity. This could look like an oral drill. You could have a slideshow with one letter that comes up on the screen at a time, and the students would tell you the name of the letter and what the letter says. So, for example, you could put up the letter A, and then the students would have to say A says A or A, or you could do the same thing with C, like C says K or S, just to really make that letter sound correspondence concrete for the students and help them before we transition into a phonemic awareness activity.
Okay, so the hands-on activity, well, up here, these are our resources. I don't know if we really have to dive too much into those. I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller so that it fits on here. But this was the hands-on activity that we came up with. So at the bottom is the spelling of the word car split into each of its letters. So C, A, and R. And then we have a picture of a car and then a blank space. So for this activity, students would take their finger, point underneath each letter, and they would say the sound that the letter makes. So I might model this with a student by like taking my hand over theirs, putting it under C, and saying k, R, car. And so I would have the student repeat that, sounding out all the different sounds, and then saying the word as a whole. And then in this empty space at the top, they would take a pipe cleaner. And we determined that this would be a good, I really could work for any stage, but we had focus of this in like the beginning of the school year. So where students would be focusing on the first letter and the first sound of a word. So I might ask my student, like, what is the first sound you hear in the word car? And hopefully they would say car. And so we'd say, great. K is the letter C. And so we would point to the C, and they could use the pipe cleaner and make a C with it by just bending it, and they could place it right in the center. And then this activity can be used throughout the year to do the different letters. Maybe you start doing like other CVC words and you want them to identify the vowel, so they can make the vowel out of their pipe cleaner. But it's just sort of an interactive way for the students to see it, hear it, and use like a tangible item as well.
Yeah. There's definitely many different ways that you can make it a little bit more challenging too. Like you could start with the first letter, and then you could work your way to also like middle and ending sounds too. And you could probably incorporate it into some sort of sort also, like just having the picture, and then students would have to sort it into words like that sound similar as car, and they would find all those pictures and put it under there too. And then for the formative assessment piece, the students would just be making their own letters independently after it was modeled and done through guided practice. Okay, and this is our one-pager on phonics and phonemic awareness. So again, we just have the definition of phonics, the construction of words through their correspondence between letters and their spoken sounds. Phonemic awareness, the ability to isolate sounds within a spoken word. And then we have some suggestions for what to teach. We would probably start with letter-sound correspondence because all of the phonemic awareness skills need that letter-sound correspondence in order to advance those. Then you could move on to the next phase within phonemic awareness, which would be blending, segmenting, and isolating the beginning, middle, and ending sounds. And then you can move on to more challenging skills such as the deletion of sounds and what a word sounds like after the first or last sound is deleted, and the same with substitution of sounds. And then 2 examples of an activity that you could use is tapping out the words, either pointing to each letter in a written word, or if it is a spoken word, you can just have students go like this as they say each sound. And then word building with tangible letters. You can give students either magnets if you have access to them that have different letters on them, or you could just cut out little papers with different letters on them. Provide students with a spoken word, and then they can do their best to put the magnets or the papers together to try and make that word. Or you could also include deletion and substitution and segmenting and blending with that too.